Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Stray Pixels podcast. I am your host, Noisy Pixel staff writer Colin Buchanan, and I am joined this week by our fellow new staff writer, Madison.
Hello.
And our editor, senior editor, Pyre. How are you guys doing?
Awesome. I am a senior editor still, allegedly.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm doing fine. I got bullied on my Xenoblade 3 review for some echo, so hopefully I fixed that this time.
You sound great.
That's awesome. Thank you.
The only thing that you should be bullied for is giving it a high score.
What? It was a good game.
Yes, but Colin doesn't like games that begin with Xeno in them.
That's not true, because I like Xenosaga 1 and 3, and I like Xenogears. I just don't like Xenoblade. The combat system is bad, and it's always been bad.
No, it's not
Says
true
the
that I
FF
dislike Xeno. I only like Select Xeno.
This is from the Final Fantasy 14 player.
Yeah, play a real MMO if you're gonna use this combat system.
Well, this isn't actually what our topic is, so I think we should move
No,
on.
it's not.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
I just didn't have something witty to say, so I decided to start with my incendiary takes again.
He's allowed to be wrong.
It's okay. We forgive you.
So, we're recording earlier than we usually do in the week because I'm going to be on vacation this weekend when we typically record the podcast. But we actually have a more timely topic than ever because this is news that broke last night and was confirmed this morning. That appropriately enough for the two people that are with me this episode, Chaos Head Noah has been blocked from appearing on Steam.
I'm honestly not surprised. I knew that was a possibility.
Yeah, it's just also hilarious considering this game was awesome on the Xbox 360.
Yeah, and they've released like both direct sequels to this game, Steins Gate and Chaos Child, are on Steam already. It's a really weird choice, but I saw it coming.
So this episode, we're kind of going to do a deep dive into Steam specifically, starting with a bit of a history and a discussion of it in the first half, and then a discussion of its history of censorship specifically in the second half, because Steam is kind of wild with this stuff, even from my personal experience.
Hell yeah.
So to kind of jump right into it, Steam obviously is pretty much the default PC gaming platform. At this point, it's being sort of challenged by Epic Games, but most of what Epic currently has to fight with is Square Enix PC ports and having to give away a free game every week in order to get people to open the app rather than just waiting for the exclusivity contract to end so that the games appear on Steam.
And when Square Enix's PC ports are like that, it's not a whole lot of competition.
But Steam is basically, if you use PC, if you're like a PC gamer of any kind, you almost certainly have this installed. If you're like a lot of us, you have like 400 games you've never played before, because it is by far the cheapest place to get video games. Even ones that aren't out yet can be found cheaper than they can on consoles. There's all those alternative methods, like Humble Bundle gives away Steam keys, and that's why a lot of people have hundreds of them. So yeah. Steam is the backlog platform, basically. So it's created and run by Valve, which used to be predominantly a software company and now gets by basically just on the 30% cut that they get from all Steam sales. But it was created originally as basically just a launcher, sort of like Blizzard has now with what used to be the Battle.net launcher, to just keep their games updated over internet services. And that was in September 2003 that it first launched. And it was like that for 2 years. And then late 2005, they start offering third-party titles on the service. And it basically sort of snowballed into what we know today. So I wanted to ask you guys, what is the first Steam game that either of you can remember buying?
Oh, that's a good question, because I used to sort of bum off my dad's account before I got my own, so I don't really remember what I bought first. I
What's the first
no,
one that you remember buying?
Oh God, I don't know. I hate making choices like this where I have to say something authoritative.
Can I just say Team Fortress 2 and call it a day?
That doesn't
Yeah,
count. You
sure.
didn't buy it. It was probably free to play.
I bought a key.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I bought a
Simulator.
box.
Hat Simulator 2.
Yeah, it was probably something like Portal 2. I don't know.
That's fair.
I'm just gonna say that because I don't remember. But I love Portal.
Mine was, I was in high school, it was Super Meat Boy. I think I got it on sale for like $2.
Yeah, that's Steam for you.
Yep. That's kind of what they're known for. So Steam became popular with a lot of publishers because it is basically DRM that players don't hate. If you don't know what DRM is, it's digital rights management. So this is basically a piece of software that's baked into another piece of software to make sure that it is a valid copy of that software before it's able to boot. So this is like Adobe having to check your internet connection to make sure you have a valid Creative Cloud subscription, for example. That's a form of digital rights management. Steam just all by itself acts as DRM, and so it was very attractive to third-party publishers. And very quickly, it became the software that pretty heavily solved the issue of immediate availability of pirated games versus ones that you had to go out to a store to buy. Now, in order to purchase a game, all you have to do is open this software, go into the store, add your credit card, and it's done. You don't have to leave the house anymore. And so that cuts down on the conveniency factor that had caused piracy to run rampant in the years before and the first couple years of Steam's existence still. By 2021, there's like 30-something thousand games on the service. And based on how difficult it used to be to get on Steam, that should probably tell you that the history of games getting onto Steam has been an interesting one. So the way that games way back in the before times got on Steam was basically the publishers reached out to Valve or they were invited to appear on the platform. And usually this had to be a big name publisher or just someone with enough clout or connections to have a contact at Valve and be like, hey, we want to list our games on this platform. Then they introduced what was called Steam Greenlight, which was a service that was intended to allow independent developers to be able to have their games appear on the service next to, all the big budget AAA titles. This was announced in July of 2012, came out the month after, and through Steam Greenlight, a developer would pay a $100 fee, and their game would basically appear as what we would now kind of consider an early access title on the Steam Greenlight page. Right. And then users would have to go in and vote for that title in order for it to appear.
I remember, seeing people on Twitter or YouTube videos being like, oh, this game is great, you should go and vote for it, or developers being like, hey, check out our game, vote for it. I didn't know how the behind the scenes stuff works, but I do remember Greenlight.
Yeah.
Greenlight pretty quickly developed something of a reputation for being absolutely chock full of shovelware. It started with the best of intentions and then ended up being sort of a playground for bad faith actors, most famously Digital Homicide, to flood lazy, largely asset flipped games onto the service and effectively give out keys to other games in exchange for people voting for their games on Steam Greenlight. It got so bad that Digital Homicide was eventually flagged for spamming the service. I think they tried to upload 60-something games in a single week.
Oh boy.
Most of which were shitty clones of each other. They were putting up sequels to games that still hadn't actually been greenlit yet.
Oh.
How? I'm not going to ask how.
Yeah, that's not a great sign for their quality, no.
Because they weren't sequels. So I'm just going to explain what an asset flip is real quick. So
yeah.
different game making engines. These are basically software tools that are used to make video games. The most famous software that's used for this particular purpose is called Unity. There is a storefront that will allow a person to legally purchase the rights to use assets that people have created, assets being like digital models and stuff like that. They can buy them off of this site and then legally use them in their games. What an asset flip is when a developer takes a bunch of assets that are purchased off of one of these stores and effectively shoves them into a game together completely unaltered to turn a quick profit. And so a lot of these games that were hitting greenlight were effectively asset flips, and that is why they were able to just spam, because these games don't take very long to make. A lot of the time it would be like the same, like it would be a sequel to a game that was exactly the same as the previous one, just with different models. And a lot
really
of them were shit themed inexplicably.
Yeah, a really fun example of the asset flip thing is Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, which goes for the asset flip aesthetic intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
It looks a bit crap on purpose because it literally is just a bunch of junk thrown together.
Huh.
But that's kind of part of the game's charm.
Like the narration actually talks about like the narration, the story you get as you go is like about asset flips and how, you know, buying assets was supposed to be the future of game development, a new pipeline, but it just sort of ended up with hundreds of clones of the same idea cheaply churned out, and that's what the game's about. It's pretty fun. I like that idea.
So there were companies that used this artistically. There were a lot of companies that took this idea and parodied it pretty significantly. But it just, the service itself developed a really bad reputation for just being absolutely full of garbage because the barrier to entry was so low. And yes, there were developers that like were making legitimate games and had a hard time paying those $100. There were actually like sort of, you know, internet-based mini angel investors that were, you know, all you had to do was like submit your game to them or something, and they'd be like, sure, we'll pay the fee for you on your behalf if you just pay it back once you like achieve so many sales. But effectively it was, I don't want to say free for all because it gets worse later, but it was the beginning of a snowball that would only continue as the years went on, because greenlight lasted from 2012 to 2017, when it was replaced by something much worse and much more abusable.
Yay!
Woo!
So Steam Direct is launched in June 2017, and now the only barrier to entry is submitting a fee, which originally Valve was kicking around the idea of making this fee as high as $5,000 just to stop people from spamming the service. But after a lot of backlash, they did make it $100 again, completely defeating the purpose of this refresh. And all that a developer had to do was submit a game that matched its description and had a working executable file, to Valve, and wait 30 days for approval. And then their game would just be on Steam. So you can imagine that the floodgates that had already been struggling to contain the absolute tidal wave of garbage were just thrown completely open by it.
Yeah, working executable is a very low bar.
The other thing about this is, so when Greenlight made the transition to Direct, there were about 3,400 games still waiting to be greenlit, and Valve just mass approved most of them.
Oh dear.
So that's how we end up with a platform like this that has 34,000 games on it. And yes, there developers like Digital Homicide were eventually, you know, torn down to the point where Digital Homicide's kind of its own topic. That's an internet rabbit hole that's been pretty thoroughly plumbed, but effectively people were warning other people about these games and review bombing them, and eventually Digital Homicide attempted to sue 300 anonymous Steam users that had left bad reviews on their games and tried to subpoena Valve for their personal information.
Whoa.
And Valve said no and banned every single Digital Homicide game from the platform.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Wow. Okay.
There's
I'm
a couple.
surprised I've
I have a
never heard of this
couple
before.
of if you want to learn more about this, this is just kind of a chapter in the history books for Steam. I'm gonna have Nate link a couple of relevant videos, two of which are from web documentarian Frederick Knudsen. He made them as part of his earliest Down the Rabbit Hole series, and several are going to be from online gaming personality James Stephanie Sterling, I suppose I should say. They went through a very public fight with Digital Homicide, which also ended with Digital Homicide trying to sue them for well over $1 million.
Oh wow. Oh, that'll be fun to watch later.
I can't remember what the amount could be much higher than that. I don't remember. It's been a minute since I've watched these videos, but it's a trip. And the fact that this is just like, you know how bad this got when on the Steam like Wikipedia page, there's an entire like section just labeled quality control issues.
Oh no.
Wow.
Oh, when even Wikipedia's noticed. Oh.
It also became really popular to submit really offensive games to Steam, and a lot of the time Valve just straight up wouldn't notice until someone made a stink about it. There were a lot of shitty games that were submitted with the word simulator to try and boost their search result presence. So people would name games like AIDS Simulator, Terrorism Simulator, Gabe Newell Simulator, and it would just be like absolute shit. One of the most famous incidents where Valve very nearly allowed an absolute bombshell to hit their service was in 2018, when a Russian game developer submitted a game called Active Shooter to Steam Direct, and it almost made it, but people found it.
Oh no.
Yes, this is a video game about school shooting. And you can be the shooter.
Oh.
Which, sidebar, there's a time and a place for stuff like this. Way back in the day, a very independent developer made an RPG Maker title called Super Columbine Rpg that was intended to sort of unpack the way that he was feeling about the shooting by effectively turning it into like a weird piece of video game modern art.
Yeah.
And I've played this game. I enjoy it for what it is. It's really obvious that he's not just like the creator was not trying to glamorize like the act of school shooting. Not the case this time.
No. Oh god.
Because the game would like tell you on screen how many civilians and security guards you had murdered.
Go for a high score.
Yeah.
Oh.
So Steam's quality control problems are long and documented and just
they are storied.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And it gets worse in the second half of this episode when we start talking about games that were censored.
I mean, I sort of do understand Steam's reticence towards certain games now. Like, they're definitely overblown, but I guess they're still trying to do damage control for a lot of past shit. Yeah.
And I will say, because I don't want to spend this entire episode just like smashing the shit out of them, there are absolutely positive things that Valve has done with Steam. Valve is one of the pioneer companies for VR technology. They created one of the first mass market VR headsets, the Valve Index. It's really overpriced, but this also came with them developing Steam VR, which is the platform that almost all commercial PC VR games run off of.
I mean, yeah, like they were one of the first PC platforms for buying games. So it makes sense that they're sort of trying to spearhead VR games in the same way, give them like a place and a platform.
Mm-hmm. And this is kind of Valve's like passion that they've had for the last couple of years, to the point where Valve developed what I would personally consider to be the first truly AAA VR game experience, which is Half-Life Alyx. I don't have a computer strong enough to run it yet, but I'm really excited when I finally do.
Huge
my
Half-Life Alyx fan,
PC
excited
meets
to
like
play
the
it.
minimum specs, but I'm not VR under minimum recommended specifications does not sound like a fun time. So I'm gonna wait until
that sounds like vomit.
wait until I
Yeah.
got that sounds like it's gonna make me motion sick. Steam has been a haven for free-to-play games. Obviously, the first big one being Team Fortress 2, which originally came in a bundle with the first Portal game, as well as Half-Life 2, and all the Half-Life 2 episodes, called the Orange Box, and was later made into a free-to-play game where it pretty much popularized the concept of the hero shooter by itself. Like, it wasn't the first one, but it was definitely the most successful one for a while, and now
I'm still
Valve
waiting for the last comic though.
And now Valve also has Counter-Strike Global Offensive, which has been a mainstay of the esports scene for like a decade now. And that's also, I think that eventually went free to play, didn't it? If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And Valve also has a habit of putting their like, in-house first-party games on ridiculous discounts, because they're not interested in making money off of these anymore. They just want people to play them. So a lot of the time you can get like Portal 2, one of the best games ever made, for like significantly under $10.
Yeah, like I've seen it at like $5 or $2 at something before. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's kind of nuts, but I'll take it.
Obviously, in more recent news, we have the Steam Deck, which is the first, like, I don't want to say mass market because you can't go out and buy one in a store, but it is the first like very heavily, widely marketed and promoted and affordable handheld gaming PC, which I've held up before because technically speaking, it can run Kingdom Hearts 1 and the Nintendo Switch can't.
Well, the Nintendo Switch definitely can. It's just Square Enix didn't bother taking the time to do that.
So true.
Steam also is one of the companies that's trying really hard to bring mainstream video games to China, which is an exceptionally difficult market for pretty much any outside created media to get into, because of the way that the Chinese government works. And I'm not going to say too much more because I don't want to get this video flagged, but it's a hard time out there. So anybody that's still like trying to get stuff that isn't just Marvel movies like put out in China, it has at least some of my respect. But anyway, do you guys have anything that you want to say about like your personal experiences with Steam? Anything that like has notably happened to you using the platform before we get into what's going on with Chaos Head Noah?
I mean, no, I think we've basically covered it. Steam is very good and
simultaneously very bad.
Yeah, it definitely has its downsides. Yeah, well, I didn't know a lot of that. That was great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm happy to be a history book for my many long and storied years of collecting all this information.
Yeah.
I have a couple references up here to remind myself of like dates and stuff, but a lot of this was off the top of my head. So
yeah, good job.
I'm gonna call that a win from me. Welcome to my Steam TED Talk. But the second part of this episode that we're about to move into is hopefully going to be much more of a conversation, because I think we're all about to get real good and mad about what kind of stuff apparently doesn't make it to Steam
Yeah.
when games about school shooting do.
Yeah.
Didn't that game not make it?
No,
Yeah.
well, Steam would have put it up completely unchecked if not for
Right.
news outlets coming
people
upon
made a
it and
stink,
covering it.
And I mean, the most famous example of stuff that did make it, the one everyone always uses, is the sex with Hitler type. You know, those kinds of games.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, Steam.
Oh yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, there's also and this is something that Digital Homicide did a lot too, but a lot of their games are like really disgustingly misogynist. Like,
Yeah.
there was this one, what was it called? Obviously all these games are removed now. I'm sure you can go find them on the internet if you truly want to for some reason, but the game was called Six Nights with Susie, I think. Obviously the title was intended to make it appear in search results for Five Nights at Freddy's. And this game is a domestic abuse simulator.
What the?
Whoa. Okay.
Like,
I was expecting
you have a model of a woman on the screen in front of you, and you get points for slapping her.
That's not what I was expecting. Oh,
that's
God.
what that game is about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steam. Your review process is great.
Yeah. So Steam is kind of just the epitome of what happens when a developer goes way too goddamn hands off with their massive sales platform.
Yeah.
On
the one hand I get it because there's so many games, but also like, man,
Valve is the Google of video game salespeople, because they really they want to have as little involvement with the process as possible and just skim their cut off the top.
Yeah.
For the game being sold on their platform.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm gonna put a pin in a lot of the rest of this discussion, because there is more to say once we get into actual censorship on the platform. So we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll see you guys back in a minute. Welcome back, everyone. In the first half of this week's episode, we kind of went over a history of Steam, the heavily shortened version, and then talked about some Steam controversies that were not related to the actual timely topic at hand of the day, because that was more than enough to discuss in its entire own segment. So I'm not going to bury the lead here. I am going to ask two people that are probably most qualified to answer this question out of our entire writing staff. Madison and Pyre, why is Chaos Head Noah not allowed on Steam?
Well, it's a bit unclear, but it's probably due to the fact that it's a gore-heavy game with some erotic elements, and it's a visual novel, and those three elements tend to make Steam panic.
It's a visual novel where all the main characters are wearing school uniforms, and the game initially disguises itself as an eroge before decidedly not remotely being an eroge.
Yeah, it's got some fan service, but it's not really an eroge at all, or it doesn't have H scenes or anything.
I'm gonna continue playing glossary here. So an eroge is an erotic game. So basically a game that is meant to be played for the purposes of titillation. And H scenes are short for chicken clip-on. See, I'm trying not to get demonetized here. Although I guess it's probably pointless.
Which,
it's probably pointless. Yes, it's short for hentai scenes. So obviously scenes that are explicitly sexual in nature.
Yeah. And I sort of saw this coming with Chaos Head coming to Steam. I was a bit worried like they might ban it. But I definitely think they shouldn't, because the game has a direct sequel, Chaos Child, which uses a lot of the same sort of visuals, and it's a sequel with a new cast but similar themes. And it's allowed on Steam. It's already on Steam, but Chaos Head is for the moment banned, which is very annoying.
I'm gonna pause here till Pyre gets back, just because it's awkward if.
Yeah.
If they're not here.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Muted?
Sorry, one moment.
Sure.
Yeah.
Everything is fine.
Okay.
Okay.
As long as you're coming back.
Yes.
Yep. So I do know the version of the game we're getting is even like a censored cut down version, and I know a bit about that, so I'm definitely gonna bring that up. Did you like stop the recording? Because isn't there like a meeting timer or something? Or
There is a meeting timer. I guess I can pause the recording. So we had to briefly pause for a second. That's really awkward, but we were talking about why Chaos Head Noah is not appearing on Steam.
Yeah.
Anything you thought you experienced then was a delusion.
Yeah. So the version of the game we're getting is definitely going to be based on there was a recent port of the game to modern consoles in Japan. So like Switch and PS5, I think. Do you know what platforms that was? It was definitely Switch at least. And that version of the game is slightly censored compared to the original release of Noah. So they basically cut down on some of the worst gore scenes in the game, for better or for worse, and it still got banned on Steam. So much for that.
Yay.
So, I'm sorry. If you're not done, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that the dual pack was not actually released like that in was only released on the Switch.
Oh, okay. My bad. I think I'm getting it confused with Anonymous Code then.
They did a separate Chaos Head dual pack on the PS4 and which was Head and Love Choo Choo.
Yeah, that was on Vita as well. That was a previous release, but this new one on Switch was slightly censored.
Yes.
So, do either of you guys know what Valve's official guidelines are for what content is allowed on Steam?
No, I don't know the specifics.
It's been this for a couple years now. Was the last time it changed?
Yeah. The way you're asking sounds like you know, so
I do know. Pyre, do you know?
Yeah. No.
I thought I knew, but I actually don't.
Valve's official stance here. Let me actually read from the blog post. But Valve says anything's allowed on Steam as long as it's not illegal. That is the company line.
Okay.
And this was updated in June 2018 after a period where basically this conservative Catholic organization called the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, which used to be called Morality in Media, which should tell you it's way more indicative of you know the shitty censorship group that it actually is an American nonprofit company that campaigns hard for anti-pornography views, public obscenity of any kind, comprehensive sex education, pretty much any depiction of sex outside of a married man and woman procreating.
Yeah, there's at least one scene towards the end of the game that is definitely causing issue there.
They so they started lobbying Valve in 2018, trying to get games with adult content removed from Steam, and Valve caved for a while. And then in 2018, in May, Valve started to make some rather questionable decisions about content that was even already on its platform, asking developers to patch it, to nerf the nudity. The most high-profile game of which was Honey Pop.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And all of this eventually led to Valve, quote unquote, clarifying their policy. Anything's allowed if it's not illegal. You may notice that this is not true. This is flatly untrue.
It's vague and unclear and
because
oh dear.
So obviously part of this has to do with the fact that a lot of the visual novels that seem to scare Valve so much do include content that is questionably legal, depending on where in the world you are, because a lot of it is at least somewhat sexual content regarding people that are 16 or 17 years old, which is the age of consent in many places, but is very notably not in the wider United States, which is obviously the biggest market for Steam. And so they don't want to get sued.
If it looks questionable and has school uniforms,
right?
Basically, yes. And so this leads to a lot of relatively high profile localization teams that want to release games on Steam, most notably Sekai Project, to basically have to censor the version of the game that goes up on Steam and then create a mod file to be downloaded from their website that puts the intended nudity back into the game. Yeah,
I mean, whatever works. And you said it was quite American, which I do notice, because I guess they're worried about being sued, but then like you do have games like Disco Elysium on the platform, which got a much higher rating in Australia.
Yes. Although that is partly the Australian ratings board is pretty well known for being kind of ridiculous.
Specifically, their problem is drugs.
Yes.
Drugs in games is what gets them uppity, and that's why they were worried about Disco Elysium.
Yes. But this kind of got them in some hot water when yet another game that was submitted to them through Steam Direct. I'm just gonna peel the band-aid off because I'm sure that we must already be demonetized by now. There was a game submitted to the platform called Rape Day. This was a game that was supposed to be a dark comedy, end quote, and a power fantasy where in the middle of a zombie apocalypse you play a person that goes around and rapes women.
Yeah, I definitely remember like the news coverage of that one.
And Valve decided to actually put their foot down and say, we considered it, but no, we can't. The developers know what kind of game they've made, and we can't sign off on this, which is really amusing given how much that implies that they have signed off on other games that do appear on their platform.
Yeah, like you're getting standards now.
If I can tell sort of a personal anecdote here, because like I mentioned before, I have some personal experience with this one. So
All right.
The way that the Steam storefront works now is that a lot of the games that are not like literally on the front page are customized to your version of the Steam store. So it's algorithm based. The same as pretty much any other freaking platform that exists.
Rumble.
And there's this one developer that keeps showing up on my new releases page. Let me find what the hell they're called, because I don't remember what the name of the developer is. They're called Furry Tales.
Okay.
The game that keeps showing up made by them on my new page in Steam, which, by the way, I don't even like, I publicly identify as a furry. I don't think I've ever bought any furry content on Steam ever, so I don't know why the hell this would be happening to me. But I keep seeing a game on my Steam, like effectively For You page, called Furry Hitler. It is an H game where you play as the titular character having sex with a bunch of women wearing swastika armbands.
Nice, really tasteful there.
And it's not the only game that they've made with this topic, because they also made another H game called Nazi Furry with very similar imagery. And these games are just on Steam.
Yeah.
But you know, a widely known and understood visual novel. Nope. Apparently we can't have that.
I mean, like, a visual novel that uses its eroticism for like horror and condemnation rather than, you know, a dark comedy power fantasy. No, that's can't have that.
Like, what a lot of the stuff that I find in terms of like, I'm not like really an H game kind of person. And that doesn't even necessarily, it's not even just because I'm gay. Like, the genre as a whole, I kind of understand on one hand. I just feel like there's so many easier ways of getting pornography, you know? But what a lot of the stuff that I do see pop up on Steam under this category reminds me of is like way back in the day on like Newgrounds, the kind of shit that people would put up there for free.
Oh God.
You know, where all the CGs were stolen from fan discs, and all the characters were like from you know, niche anime that had never been officially released in English, and
or inexplicably the Super Best Friends play that one time. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
Lord.
It's this weird juxtaposition between Steam as the wild, wild west in terms of what kind of content you can find on the platform and what you can expect to see, and Steam, the platform that says, no, we don't want this one specific game, even though it's, you know, well known and popular in Japan. Well, popular, relatively speaking, but
and relatively identical in content to one we've already released. Like they released Chaos Child. I'm still not over this. It's arbitrary as hell.
Yeah, that exists right there.
Like it blows my mind. And I think I was when I first discovered this, I think I was on a voice call in the Noisy Pixel Discord server, and I think I sent like a message to what was then the Stray Pixels group chat, which was just me, Nate, and Bailey, being like, what the fuck am I seeing right now with my good Christian eyes?
Yes, sex with Hitler. We've all seen it.
I get that this part of the video is just ranting at this point, whereas the first part was a TED talk, but like,
we need this out of our systems.
I cannot I cannot mentally process the logic of the way that Valve picks and chooses what games are on its platforms. Like, I made an attempt earlier. I was like, okay, if a game involves scantily clad people in school uniforms, I guess I get it. And I guess Nazi porn is not technically illegal, but really?
You say that, and we've got wow, I found a Yandere Simulator clone on the platform.
Wow.
That's great. Wow, Yandere School finished development before Yandere Simulator. Good for them.
Oh, help.
It's so much. It's so much shit. There's mountains of this stuff on Steam going unchecked.
It's so definitely arbitrary. It's just it's a situation a bit like Facebook, where they're trying to have a consistent stance on things, but there's just so much content and not enough moderators that they end up with this incoherent mess.
Like,
I definitely think that's what's happening.
This is what I mean by Steam wants to be as hands-off as possible.
Have I done something wrong?
I haven't done anything.
What the heck have I?
Dun, dun, dun.
Pyre, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh boy, I
But
can't
Mads,
hear
you can't hear me?
That's great.
Okay.
Okay.
Well.
Oh, there we are. Okay, unplugged everything and replugged it in. Don't know why that happened. Sorry.
Now that's strategy.
Yeah. Master of tech right here.
It's just enormously frustrating because they want to be so hands-off that we don't know like how many moderators even work for this company.
Yeah.
Because they make it so fucking difficult to actually get a hold of any of them. Like I said, it's very similar to Google and the struggles that like YouTube creators face trying to like fight for their jobs because the algorithm has deemed one of their videos is made for children, which completely like neutralizes their ability to you know be boosted in the algorithm through engagement. It's so robot like algorithm oriented that it's a platform whose owners truly are at this point rent seekers. Like to get political, that's what the 30% cut is just rent for being on this platform where you could barely be seen if you're not, you know, a high profile indie developer at the very least.
Yeah.
Steam is good. Steam is cheap, but any platform's gonna have some flaws, and Steam's flaws are annoying.
And it's frustrating because the fact that this is just apparently is working has kind of caused it to bleed over into other platforms. We're starting to see like shovelware shit like we talked about in the first half of the episode not only appearing but being promoted on the Switch and the PlayStation, especially the PlayStation. Because very famously, you know, one of these shitty weirdly racist games called Life of Black Tiger appeared on the PlayStation 4.
Oh, and got all those trailers. I remember that.
The trailer was put up on the official PlayStation YouTube channel for this garbage.
It looked like one of those Garbo asset flip mobile games.
Like,
and it was
I don't know if it was an asset flip or not, but it's a piece of trash that doesn't run correctly and is alarmingly racist.
I didn't get far enough for the alarming racism, but yeah, like it got like one of those, you know, high polish, you know, videos for like PS4 indie games.
Oh,
the black tiger seeks out a white tiger female to mate with.
Oh wow!
Oh no,
okay.
That's
this is promoted by Sony on the
I see
official
this now.
PlayStation.
See,
YouTube
I didn't
channel.
actually know what this is, so I looked it up and I went, And the top comment that just really nails it here is this really pushes the PS1 to its limits.
Yeah, I remember that reminds me of the YouTuber Kadikarus. He reviewed
Caddy.
Caddy. He reviewed a PS4 game that was like very weirdly low quality and wasn't graphically impressive at all. So every so often during the review, he would just say, "This is PS4."
Yes,
like
I
he's
remember
hyping
this.
up the
Caddy's
graphics.
talked about Life of Black Tiger before too.
Yes,
he
must
did an
have.
episode on like shitty games on the PlayStation Store.
Yeah, and it's
this is the episode where we talk about pornography and also plug other YouTubers.
Yes, but like I think about that video so much. Whenever I see like a low quality game on like an otherwise very nice system, I just think the power of PlayStation.
James Stephanie Sterling does something kind of similar where like every so often when something like completely ridiculous or typical of the industry is happening, like they'll cut to silence and then you'll just hear video games.
Yes,
so true.
Yeah. It's basically doing an aristocrat's punchline, but for the games industry.
Yes.
That's great.
Okay. Pyre, any closing thoughts on shitty Steam censorship?
I was hoping to have like anything I could segue solid things into, but nothing really found a good spot. So here I'll just segue into that one time that Manga Gamer, I think the game's title was Bokuto.
Yeah.
They released it on Steam and then tried to argue that they'd taken the content out, but they submitted the wrong build. So they submitted a H game to Steam with the H content fully intact and went, but there is no H content in here, and resubmitted the wrong build again.
Did it get through?
No, it didn't. It was just very funny because the submitter put the wrong build in a couple of times. I don't have any comments.
Now, is what you have a H game, or is it a cactus?
Yes, you can't have you can have Nazi porn as long as you say that the game is Nazi porn. If you say this game has no Nazi porn in it.
No, they were saying that they were saying there was no H content in it.
Yes,
because
I know.
Supposed to be the safe build.
Yes. That's what I'm saying is like the game has to at least be what you say it is.
Yeah. Wow.
Mads, how about you?
No, I think my closing comment is this is the power of PS4. That's that's what I think of when I think of shovelware. We're
all losing brain cells at this point, so I'm gonna go ahead and call the episode.
This is the power of the Nintendo Switch.
I want to thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Stray Pixels podcast. We post theoretically every Tuesday on your podcast app of choice and on the Noisy Pixel YouTube channel. What was your guys' first game that you ever bought on Steam? What do you think of the recent direction of the company? And by recent, I do mean over the last 4 years since this content policy was announced, and then they did nothing in accordance with it. What's the worst story that you've ever heard of Steam censoring a game that we didn't mention here? Let us know in the comments on YouTube. If there's anything you'd like us to talk about on a future episode, you can also leave a comment under this video, or you can talk to us on Twitter. You can find me, Colin, at the Arcane Ranger, Pyre at PyreLoop, that's PYRELOOP, and Madison at Mads_in_0. That's 0 spelled out ZERO, or the site itself at Noisy Pixel News. The Stray Pixels podcast is brought to you by NoisyPixel.net. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers who work hard to bring you the latest news, reviews, previews, podcasts, and more. Please join our community Discord server to come talk nerdy with us, and like, subscribe, and follow to keep up with our future content. We will see you guys next week. Bye!
Bye!